Hello, I'm Beau Simmons, editor of the Stillwater News Press, and you're joining us in the newsroom. We are a production in partnership with Studio Stillwater. And today I'm joined by news editor Tanner Holubar, city editor Michelle Charles, and reporter Ashlynd Huffman. Hello, everyone. Something we were going to talk about today, it's a little bit different, but April is usually a pretty busy month for us. It's also a month where things sort of that's a lot of special projects sort of hammer us at the same time. We have a lot going on, and one of the big ones is our Progress magazine, which is really a look at the city, what kind of new things are coming up, and, what are the kind of things Stillwater can be proud of. What are some of the, sometimes we look at changes in the industry, and this year we're going to probably, I don't think we can do a magazine like this without focusing in on how we've overcome the pandemic or fought through it. So Tanner, what are the kind of things you're working on? I think we had you look at some social services, nonprofits, things like that, because they, of course, when everyone's tightening their belts, sometimes the first things to go are the charitable donations. So how are the people you talk to, how are they handling it?
That's been one of the things that, just talking with some of these organizations is just the overall determination that they could not stop their services, not just Stillwater, but, this county, just this part of Oklahoma that just rely on these kinds of services, so that was one thing, talking with people like at Our Daily Bread or, United Way, things like that, where it's just, these volunteers who, they're the engine that drives that bus anyway, but they basically doing that even more so last year, even with all the risks, they're still working, as many hours as they could, sometimes people couldn't be there because they had been exposed. So that was, there was just a revolving sort of,
let's take, for
process.
Instance, Our Daily Bread, which is our food and resource center and regional food bank. That's an organization that not only do you have to worry about maybe people aren't going to donate as much as they did, but the need almost doubles or triples, right? I mean, wasn't that something that they were sort of talking about early on, that the need increased, more people were coming to them, especially, during the lockdown or when the layoffs started?
Right. Yeah, there were definitely the need went up, and they also had to try to have drive-in, things where people would pick up basically like, kind of just a package of things that was basically everything that they would need for like a family, kind of depending on. But, this is a place where usually you can go in and shop, and it's basically kind of set up so that people who, might not be able to go shop at Walmart, they still get they feel like they're still shopping at a grocery store. They feel like it's still kind of a regular shopping experience, so that's one thing that they're really working toward trying to get back toward, is being able to have people actually in there shopping, going down the aisles with the different types of food that, just like you would, at a regular grocery store, so, and just with all the amount of, services that they continue to expand, with their mobile market, which allows them to go to some smaller towns around Stillwater, as well as some other improvements that they're making there as well, so I think just one thing for me that I've noticed during, just talking with some of these organizations is just the overwhelming determination that they just they couldn't shut down. They needed, and there was some, government funding that some of these, the CARES Act and things provided a little bit of that, but they just, they had to just bear down and just keep their heads to the grindstone, and just keep going. And that's just really admirable, in my opinion.
Well, and when you've got an organization like Our Daily Bread, where, they flat out said, we're seeing people who have never asked for help before,
right,
who have never needed help before. So that was huge. It wasn't even just the normal customers, the normal people that they serve needing it more. This was a whole new group of people who probably, in some cases, never thought that they would need that kind of assistance. So there's that. And then the customer choice model, I mean, I can see why they really want to get back to that, because there's a dignity portion of it, right? Where you can feel like you're going in and you're actually shopping. And the other thing is you can pick the things that you're actually going to use, as opposed to getting a one size fits all, box of food, and you're like, what do I do with these dried beans? We don't eat lentils,
Right. I should
What's
say
a garbanzo
that
bean, and how do you?
People did step up, so it wasn't like all their, it wasn't like everything dropped off. I'm just saying sometimes, that's sort of more of a larger scale look at things. But yeah, I think plenty of people did step up for them.
Oh no, absolutely they did, and they stepped up for the community in multiple ways by even helping to screen and distribute CARES Act funding to help people pay their utility bills and their rent and their mortgages, working with the city of Stillwater for that. So, because again, they're a food and resource center, and their services are so broad, that made them a great fit for that. They were the people that folks were already going to for so many things. So, yeah, the nonprofit, I think that's going to be one of the big stories that comes out of this, is like they're going to be some of the heroes.
Well, I was going to ask Ashlynd, put her on the spot. I don't know if it was more opinion-based or if it actually played out that way, that people who use the services for neglect or abuse or, those kind of services, did we actually have, higher instances of abuse? I mean, is that, what did it play out the way people were worried when more people were stuck together in the same place?
I spoke with someone quite a while ago, more than 6 months ago, about DHS, and they said they haven't received a lot, but that was when students were not in school, so they didn't have the reporting. Wings of Hope, I spoke with them a year ago during the beginning of the pandemic, and they definitely had a lot more complaints and people coming to them.
And that's one of the things that I think people were worried about, is a lot of times it's your public school teachers who
that
discover
and the
abuse,
school
right,
resource
and report
officers
that, or
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when everybody's at home, there's a lot of stuff going on that nobody sees, right? I mean, if I can stay in my same pair of sweatpants for a week, a lot of other things can be happening in homes.
I did notice a lot more charges after the stay-at-home order was lifted of domestic abuse being filed here. So I'm assuming it more happened, but there wasn't that many charges being filed during the stay-at-home portion where everyone had to stay home except for essential people. And then there was a huge uptick of domestic violence charges, but I'm not sure the exact number because I didn't go through and count all of them.
So do you think that was some delayed reporting of some stuff that happened during the lockdown, or it was just that all of a sudden people were able to get out and report?
It could be a mixture of both. I mean, not a lot of charges were being filed in general during the pandemic, the beginning of it, but probably delayed reporting because, I mean, if your abuser is in the house with you, you're not going to report it right then and there. You're going to wait later because if you report it, they're already at the house. They're right there underneath of you. So it's like you can't really escape to report.
Any of that come up in your reporting, Tanner? Just people talking about how they didn't see the people that they often, saw, in a normal year or week or month?
I mean, nothing specific. I mean, Michelle kind of touched on a little bit where there were a lot of more people who maybe hadn't required that kind of help, so there may have been a lot of people who, hadn't had any contact with some of these organizations before, at least that's kind of some of the stuff, like nothing specific about, we've seen more of this or that, I mean, except from, just people just needing more food, with the lack of jobs, a lot of people losing their source of income, things like that, so it was almost just the same things were needed, just more so, kind of it's kind of what I gathered from everything that I've looked at.
And the usual statistic that they throw out, I mean, if you talk to United Way, they'll tell you that 1 out of 3 Payne County residents comes into contact with a United Way agency, an agency supported by United Way, during an average year. So, I mean, we've already got a pretty good portion of our population that's getting some type of support or some type of assistance from, these agencies that do a wide variety of things.
And Michelle, your main progress assignment was probably just taking a look at real estate, if there was any impact on that. We know that maybe fewer open houses, right? You don't get the walkthroughs, but
Definitely.
The market fluctuates, we know, but did it really impact housing?
I have actually been surprised to find that it did not have quite the level of impact you would have thought. I believe it did probably slow down closings. I know I personally did a refinance this year that took 6 months to go to closing, which was incredibly frustrating. And a lot of it was COVID. Everybody was working remotely. But no, I went to a Board of Realtors luncheon just yesterday, and they said that actually the market was up 9% over the previous year.
Wow.
I know. So people who needed to buy homes were still buying homes. The process just might have taken a little bit longer. It might have been, you just didn't have your open houses and things that you could go to. So it did impact how the homes were sold, didn't impact the fact that they were selling. It's a hot market right now. It is a seller's market right now.
I've also wondered if one of the things that could impact, college enrollment, kids who maybe just are going to delay things or really not, or virtual from their hometown to Stillwater. So they're not moving in here. They're not renting. They're not doing those things. So, yeah, I'm curious. Everything seems to affect everything else.
It does. And one thing I've seen just through looking at some of the parent groups, the OSU parent groups that are online, that, the kids are coming back and people are definitely looking for places for their kids to live right now. I mean, it's a big thing. There's a lot of discussion around that. And there are people moving into, apartment buildings that maybe hadn't had a lot of people in them before. There were some projects that had kind of stalled out. Those are starting to fill up now. So I think there's a sense that people are very anxious to get back to normal, whatever that's going to be, or as close to normal as possible. Really, even when you look at travel over the pandemic, people weren't traveling that much, but people who did travel, from, some of the things that I had seen, seemed to prefer doing those private homestays, like an Airbnb type thing, to staying in a hotel where they would not have to share common spaces with other people. So I don't know, maybe there's I think people just kind of still wanted their own place to go to feel safer, where they could control the environment a little bit more. I don't know if that contributed to buying more homes.
One thing I kind of noticed when I was trying to move back to Stillwater is the price of rent was skyrocketing. A lot of the houses that were normally $500 a month were up to $725, and I was shocked.
Really?
So many houses were just...
Wow.
Yeah. Because online, on Zillow at least, it'll show a red arrow if the price goes down and a green arrow if it goes up. And a majority of them were going up.
Goodness.
So it took me about 3 to 4 months to even find a place because all of them were just so high.
Were there a lot of openings, or, was it just finding a place that you could afford, or finding a place, period?
Finding a place, period. And for a one-bedroom, $725 is outrageous. It better be a very nice house. And it was not. So, yeah, price of rent was just skyrocketing.
Name names. No,
I have 0 names.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, that was a struggle for sure.
Well, thank you for that. I should have interviewed you. That's definitely going to work its way into the story now.
Thank you.
No, for sure. That's a big thing because Stillwater is a big rental market.
Right.
That's part of what the rental market is, part of what pushes up our real estate prices and keeps them up, because people can buy a house that might not actually be worth that much if you just looked at the house, but its economic value as a generator of income, if you get 3 or 4 people living in it and paying rent individually, all of a sudden makes it a lot more valuable.
And it's not like it started off that high. It was in a matter of a week. I was looking at a house and I was like, oh, I could probably afford that. And then I look a week later and it's up $725 from $500. I didn't know what happened. And I kept looking at a bunch of houses and they were just pricing and pricing and pricing.
I wonder if it's tracking you, like you go on those vacation sites where you try to bundle. You ever do that? You try to put a package together.
Mm-hmm. I have never done that.
And you go back later and the price has gone up
Yes.
And it's because you're trying to play around with the packages. That's not what's happening.
No.
I was just shocked. I really was.
Wow. So it sounds like demand is up if they can command higher prices than normal.
And it wasn't like they even included like utilities or anything. That was just the rent itself.
Wow.
So, I mean, I could understand if they included some utilities, but it was just the rent.
I mean, as far as someone who rents here in Stillwater, I mean, and Tanner, you've rented a couple different places too. Do you feel like it's kind of tough?
I mean, my rent hasn't changed in like 4 years, and I even just re-upped, and I think it's going up by $10, I think.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I also have been kind of just looking at houses, just sort of seeing what's there, and it does seem like it, some houses you might be like, that might be a little more than you might be willing to offer for it, kind of thing, or, so it's like, it does seem like it is a seller's market, but
Absolutely.
For sure.
As far as, I didn't see any, there was kind of a lack of neighbors for me for a little while, at least like kind of during the school year. Yeah, at least kind of right around me there was, kind of not presently now, but, for a few months it was pretty, like people who had lived above me for a while moved out, it just kind of seemed like it was less people, it might have just been because it was, less people in town or moving in there specifically. I don't know, but it was a little bit less. It's a little easier to park around there.
All those vacancies probably helped keep your rent lower, kept it from going up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can keep a good tenant who actually pays their rent, you probably will really want to lock them in.
Mm-hmm. We've had Ashlynd look into, I guess, wellness, fitness, personal care, and I am interested in this because if you're like me, then as soon as this thing hit, you just let yourself go to go to pot, just go to hell. But like, nah, forget it. Not gonna worry about it.
The sweatpants.
What's this stuff? Yeah, right.
It's too comfy.
Not for everybody. Some people were really mad that the gyms were closed. Not me. It didn't affect my life. Right.
Yeah.
What did you think, or what did you learn? I should say, when you're talking to people who sort of put their, they make their money based on personal care and based on people not just crawling into a hole.
Yeah, I focus more on local fitness businesses rather than places like Planet Fitness, even though I'm a huge fan of Planet Fitness. I thought they were probably not as
Are
affected.
they a sponsor?
They are not, but
okay,
we're
okay.
We should get
them
them.
now.
We need to get them sponsored.
Yeah, for sure.
But I didn't think that big businesses like that were as affected as our local businesses. So I featured, I'll have to look up the name because I always mess it up, Heavenly Aerial Arts and Pole and Fitness. And they're a little outside of Stillwater before you get to Perkins, and very small business, but they actually do all kinds of training, from pole training, aerial, silks, and they have classes for kids and adults.
Are you talking about pole dancing?
It's fitness pole dancing.
All right. You didn't. I felt like you were trying not to say it.
I was trying not to. They actually had to change their name because pole was in the original title, and it kind of got some controversy.
I would bet that there are people who don't feel comfortable maybe with like what they view as certain connotations or associations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I went to their training and it was insane. Like,
did you try it?
No, but they have some crazy upper body strength. I was like, oh my gosh. I was shocked.
So it's a fitness thing.
Yeah,
right?
it was a lot of cardio and
your core.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. They said that they were not as affected as they thought they would. The owner, Tamara, she actually has, she travels back and forth between Stillwater and Texas every other week because she lives in Texas. And I think she's opening up another location in Texas. But she said that she wasn't as affected because her clientele stayed up. And, she's built that clientele. And, they had to keep everything sanitized. When I went, everybody was wearing masks, which made everything more intense. Because all the cardio.
Now they were they're located outside the city limits?
Yeah, just a little bit outside.
Okay, so they didn't have to shut down until the state order came out. The municipal order would not have impacted them then.
Right.
As a quote unquote non-essential business. What about the silks and the aerial? I mean, that's a really different thing, and that's kind of cool. That's almost like Cirque du Soleil looking stuff to me.
I know. Unfortunately, when I went, they were not doing the silks and the
What are you talking about?
Yeah, explain it for people who don't know what it is.
It's kind of, okay, it is really like a circus. These people are on silks and they're doing all these different tricks.
Okay.
It's like a big piece of cloth that hangs from the ceiling, and you wrap yourself up in it, and you climb it and do these
crazy,
aerial,
insane,
acrobatic sort of things in it.
Okay, it's like you're wrapped up in big curtains, rolling yourself around. Okay,
wrapped up in big curtains, throwing yourself
Beau, you make
around.
it sound easy. Look, it's really intense.
I doubt it's easy.
I probably couldn't do it, and I work out 6 times a week.
He doesn't make it sound very artistic either. It's much more artistic.
Silks could mean a lot of things. I didn't know what you're talking about.
They could.
And well, this week, or I guess at the end of last week, at the very almost end of last week, we got a new president designee, which designee sounds like a stupid word to me. We'll call Dr. Kayse Shrum the future president of Oklahoma State University.
There you go.
And
because she's not president-elect, but it's kind of the same thing.
Right. Yeah. I took that on myself.
How fun was that, Beau? How fun was that, sitting outside that marathon executive session? There's
not a whole lot to do when you're outside of an executive session. I don't even like to give people updates like we're still waiting. That's, it's more of one. We'll let you know when we know something. But yeah, I think that the marketing team there at the university had sent that out because this was going to be the 4 finalists. They were going to interview 2 on Thursday, 2 on Friday. They never announced who those finalists were. They never even announced who the candidates were, which is a whole nother thing we won't get into right now.
Yeah.
But who could say how long these interviews, took, each one of them. But the marketing team had figured they could make an announcement by 5:30 Friday, I think is what it was. So we sort of, I think I headed out there even a little earlier because I figured we would learn something, right at the end of that meeting. They would sort of come back into executive session, announce what they discussed. And that is what happened before the presser. They made their announcement upon returning from executive session, but that was after 11 o'clock,
So you were out there for 6 hours
and
waiting?
It was after our press time. And so we sent our biggest paper of the week to press without a president, with one that said, at press time, we don't have one. They're still deliberating. But we ended up with Dr. Kayse Shrum, which we had always kind of picked as the front runner, right? I think from the start, because we knew her from the pandemic. We knew she was a very public figure already. She was part of Governor Stitt's cabinet.
Exactly, and on that pandemic response team and all those briefings early on.
Yeah, so she was probably the one most people were familiar with, so it didn't really come as a surprise, but
right.
Definitely, very credentialed, very, a lot of qualifications, a lot of leadership roles already, and the first woman. The first female president. The 19th president, the first woman.
Yes. I mean, it's a big deal. It really is. And it's a very cool thing. I went to a thing yesterday at the campus to kind of introduce people to Dr. Shrum. It was kind of billed as a meet and greet, but really, they kind of set up on a stage, and she talked to President Hargis, and took questions and things like that. Introduced everyone to her family. Her husband was there, and all but one of her kids were there, and it was a chance to get to know a little bit more about her and what she sees happening, what her priorities are going to be for the university. There were a couple of things that felt a little bit weird.
Do tell.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, because they made an awful big deal out of her husband being the first cowboy. That was a big deal. And, I mean, we've had, I guess, first cowgirl has kind of become sort of a position, right? I mean, it's become, because over the last couple of presidents, their wives have had more of a public profile. I mean, definitely you could say Ann Hargis. I mean, she almost had her own platform.
Did she coin the term first cowgirl?
I believe
cowgirl?
it was believe it was coined for her. Yes, but Mrs. Halligan also, she was not quite as high profile. Let's say she wasn't driving around campus in an orange golf cart, waving at everyone, but she was definitely a very popular figure. And because the president has to do so much entertaining of people and kind of, schmoozing, they're the public face of the university.
And you're a major fundraiser as well.
Exactly, and that's your goal. You got
to rub elbows. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you're a rainmaker to a certain extent as well for the university. So the spouse has always been, a big asset in that. I'm not sure how that works if we have a first cowboy. It was kind of weird because they talked about, well, you have construction experience, so maybe we can put you to work there. I don't remember them saying that to Ann Hargis. Well, you have very high level experience as a business executive. Maybe we can put you to work in administering things at the college. I mean, I don't remember that. They also talked about her shoes. And every woman in the place, her jaw just kind of dropped when it came up. And it happened. I don't think it was meant to be anything that was, I don't think it was meant the way it came across. I think it was meant to try to humanize her. It was at a point where they were asking the family to basically tell stories on her, to humanize her. And usually if your family in a public place where you're being honored for a professional accomplishment, if they're asked to tell a story on you, they're going to tell something very harmless. And her daughter did. She said, well, she thinks she's the funniest person on earth, and she laughs so hard at her own jokes that she can't even get through them. So there are little things like that would not be, they're not even that stereotypical. But then someone suggested that her husband tell about her shoe collection. And there was just something about that just felt so stereotypical. Now, I'm going to freely say, I was sitting there admiring her super cute orange suede pumps. So apparently she does like a shoe, as I like a shoe, as many women like a shoe. But I just didn't feel like that was the moment to really be focusing on her shoe collection.
So you want the standard to be, how presidential are you? Right?
Yes.
But... yeah, I guess at the same time, like, I think we talked about that before. Don't you want, a brand of feminism that says you can be as feminine as you as you want, or,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can be super cute and super smart at the same time. You can go out there and, kick ass in a really cute pair of pumps. You can. And I want the freedom to do that. Ashlynd wants the freedom to do that. We think everyone should be able to be themselves fully. You don't have to, put on a man suit and I'm a man now because I'm in a, playing a boys game. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, it's like, at least they didn't ask her for a cookie recipe. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Anyway, that's my rant for the day.
Tanner, any thoughts on feminism? I can't get that word out. Or women in leadership.
I made you guys uncomfortable now, didn't I?
No.
I'm gonna punt to Tanner.
No, I just want to say it's an awesome thing. Unfortunately, it's taken until 2021 to get the first woman president at OSU. Right. When you see a lot of schools in the region, a lot of schools around this country that have women as their leaders. So on one hand, it is kind of unfortunate to see that it took so long, but on the other hand, it is awesome to see that, especially because she was already she was president of the Center for Health Sciences at OSU. She's an actual medical doctor, which, in our newsroom, we kind of joke about, we don't like to include the doctor title for a lot of people because they're not medical doctors.
Right.
She has that level of accomplishment with her, her doctorate, and she's seems like she's been able to earn her way to where she is now, which I think is very cool. So I just think it's a great, move for OSU, and, hopefully it's going to be the beginning of a great new era, and, I think she'll be a great president.
I
really
agree.
do.
Well, and one of the things that did come up is, I mean, during the Hargis administration, really the focus has been on building, right? I mean, literal building, like making new buildings, fundraising, and building new facilities. And now that we have so many of these new facilities underway or completed, I think the next era is really focusing on, she talked about research. And as someone who is a medical doctor, as someone who has been the president of the OSU College of Medicine, I mean, she has a sense of the OSU system overall, trying to integrate those different parts of it, and then also the value of research. So I think that will be, a big push under her. Kind of turning a corner. It's a new era.
All right.
And a young family. Oh, and like 4 of her kids are go to college at OSU.
Which it's got to be bonus points, right?
I would think. I don't know. Maybe it's weird.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden having your mom work at the high school. I don't know.
I don't know what it's like for the actual students, but I mean, you got to figure if you're applying for that job.
This is a family that bleeds orange. I think that would probably help. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Ashlynd. We finally, about 2 to 3 weeks of work culminated in an article on 780, 781. What? Were you not ready?
Questions.
I was not ready.
Okay. Explain the entire thing to me in 8 words. No. See, we're not. That's not.
It was confusing. Very confusing.
To be fair, you weren't. Like I said, this is about 5 years old, and the campaign began even the real impactful. We're talking about these criminal justice reform measures, and that stuff really started in earnest about 7 to 8 years ago. And so 780, was a state question that reduces sentences, changes sentencing from felony to misdemeanor in some drug possession cases. And what exactly?
It changed simple drug possession and theft under 1,000 into misdemeanors. It was previously theft couldn't be more than $500, and they changed the $500 to $1,000.
And the point is really to just keep people out of jail, out of prison, see if they can get them into sort of a different system that won't cost as much.
Yeah.
And they figured they could use these theoretical savings, and they were kind of theoretical even when they wrote it into the, when they started working on this, they knew it was going to be theoretical, but they were going to take those savings and create county funds that would go to mental health, substance abuse, rehab.
Mm-hmm.
But that fund did not have a lot of money in it, did it? Not for even the last 4 or 5 years. They never found a way, even though it's now in our state constitution. They had not found the money. Where are they finding the money now?
Good question.
Those only kind of ask.
I'm gonna let Michelle take the budget stuff.
Well, no, you know this. You did the interviews. I mean, it was coming up with the formula. It was figuring out how much they were actually supposed to be saving. Because, like you said, theoretical
that was the
savings,
debate.
right?
I mean, yeah, because the DOC has one number to say. They're going to ask for a bigger budget every year, right?
Yeah.
So even if the prison population is reduced, the next year they're still going to say we need however many hundreds of millions of dollars. When people do that, it's hard to say no. We saved $10 million. we got to put $10 million into mental health and substance abuse. And I think now what we found out is they did settle on a formula, at least through what's the organization?
OMES.
Yeah.
Right. The Office of Management
Enterprise
Services. Yes.
And I think it was recently that they actually figured out the formula.
Like very recently.
Yeah.
Like they were meeting when you first
like when I
set up an
started the
interview.
story, they were talking to DOC, Department of Corrections, about the formula and everything, because advocacy groups and then OMES and DOC, they all had different formulas for the money. And so nobody had the correct formula to calculate the exact number of savings.
What was the problem with that? I mean, I remember Roger Thompson was talking about that. Like it costs so much,
appropriations
but
chair, right?
the appropriations chair for the Senate, for the Oklahoma Senate.
Yeah, they were saying, so basically the thought behind it was, okay, if we're not putting people in prison, then we're saving all that money from the people that should have went to prison. They're not going, so we have all that money to save. But Roger Thompson said that they didn't calculate that the lights are still on at the prison. You have to pay the guards, you have utilities, you have all these fixed costs that nobody calculated into the equation.
So when you look at cost per prisoner, you're actually just taking sort of an average.
Yeah, so pretty much that's all they were doing. They were taking the cost of prisoner and then multiplying it and doing all the math, and it came up with like $60 million, which was way out.
Seems like something they could have figured out 4 years ago.
That's what I thought.
It seems like it. It seems like it. I mean, part of the thing with these, is that when you have these citizen initiatives, because basically anyone in the legislature will tell you the reason this happened is because the legislature would not do anything on it. This was something that the public wanted, that, everyone has pretty much agreed has been needed for a long time. And then you have, citizens coming up with this initiative petition and the people putting the language together. They may not have access to all of those numbers to actually, to actually have a firm number or say, we're going to peg it to this line item in the budget. And that complicates it because then you get this and then people have to figure out how to do it. And, so, Mr. Thompson, didn't he tell you that they had to just pull certain costs, like the cost of feeding the inmate or medical care, certain things like that?
What was the number that Chris Steele gave you? Former Speaker Chris Steele, who had really shifted to criminal justice reform, he was talking about how much they had figured it cost to house a prisoner as opposed to
I think it was a little more than $13 a day. I think
what they're actually saving, they think.
Well, that was the cost of an inmate is $13.25 or something like that is what Roger Thompson gave me. I'd have to refresh my memory, but Chris Steele said that his experience was that people in the legislature actually did not understand what they were supposed to do. So he said that, talking with these people, they didn't understand what they were supposed to do. Some of these people came after it even went into an effect, and it wasn't even explained to them what they were supposed to do. So basically, nobody knew what they were supposed to do, but they said that they were hopeful to get more money in it this upcoming fiscal year.
And wasn't Steele's number closer to like $10 million?
Yeah, his was $10 million, and then each year after this fiscal year, he projected between $10 and $15 million. So.
Okay. Well, if that works out, if people have read your reporting and they start demanding answers, then maybe there will be money for counties in substance abuse, mental health treatment.
Well, Noel Bagwell from Drug Court said that they could use the money.
Okay.
So.
All right. There you go. Diversion instead of incarceration.
All right. I think we've got it covered. This has been Beau Simmons with Tanner Holubar, Michelle Charles, Ashlynd Huffman. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom.
To get in touch with Beau and the team, you can email editor@stwnewspress.com. You'll find links to the social media and any articles mentioned in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.